You may have already heard the news, but earlier this week, the Linux Journal shut down for good. The Linux Journal is kind of an institution. It is the longest running Linux magazine on planet Earth. It was originally conceived in 1776. Now it came into being shortly after Linux did, and the history of Linux Journal is absolutely stellar. It followed along with Linux as Linux grew. Bob Young was involved, the guy who created Red Hat at the very beginning, and all the way through up until today, it has had some of the best writers in the Linux world have contributed an article here or there, or been involved as editors or constant contributors to the magazine over the years, and it has directly helped to spread free software, open source, and Linux far and wide. I mean, obviously, it didn't do it in a vacuum. There's been so many people, doing that sort of work, but man, Linux Journal was the king, was the granddaddy, and now it's gone. And I just simply felt like I needed to record something about that. I don't have a plan for this. There's no script or points for me to read off here. I'm just bummed out about it. I'm actually recording this on Friday. I found out about this, I believe it was Tuesday morning. And so for those of you who don't know, up until Tuesday morning, I was the deputy editor of Linux Journal. Background on this one. So I became the deputy editor of Linux Journal less than a year ago, maybe 11 months, something like that. I don't know. I want to say, because it's August right now. Maybe it was September or something like that when we first started deciding to make me part of Linux Journal. And I had been reading that magazine since the 90s, on and off. And it was the first Linux magazine I ever read. It really is it's the granddaddy, It's the big one, It's the real big magazine, and I'd always wanted to write for it. I'd written for a few other Linux magazines. I'd written for a number of online websites. Network World I wrote for 5 years, something like that. And so it's not like I hadn't been writing in the Linux space, but I'd never gotten the chance to write for Linux Journal. The moments never lined up quite right. The stars didn't align in just the right way to make it all happen. But last year, it just kind of all worked out. I was a fan of Linux Journal, and the Linux Journal editors and publishers were fans of mine, and we just had this big mutual admiration club, and we were chatting with each other, and we were like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could find some way to make it work, to find some way to get me involved. And we did. It was fantastic. It wasn't like I was out there looking for jobs and pounding the pavement saying I have this show and all these other things I do. But Linux Journal. How could I turn down Linux Journal? It's sort of the Tonight Show of Linux magazines, right? It's the old adage of, when Johnny comes knocking, you don't turn down the Tonight Show. This is kind of how it was with Linux Journal. I had the chance, and the publisher and head editor were giving me the opportunity to craft my own particular brand of ridiculousness into the words on the page of Linux Journal. And I can't turn that down. I had to do it. And in the, whatever it is, 11 months-ish, something like that I got to be involved, they let me introduce all of the issues that I was working on. So you open up Linux Journal and you flip to the first couple pages, and there's me, which they chose a ridiculous picture of me. They chose a picture of me is basically like this. If you haven't read the magazine, you're missing out. Like this, in front of every article they have this is the person who wrote the article, and then they have the picture. It's a magazine thing, right? And the picture they chose of me was me going. Head tilted all to the side, making a ridiculous face. It was fantastic. I think they just went through my videos until they found me making a funny face, and they're like, "That's a good face. Let's put that in there." I love those guys. They're my people. What can I say? And so I jumped on board with that, and man, they just embraced me. Like as part of the Linux Journal family, like right away, I felt instantly at home, instantly surrounded by like-minded people and friends, and man, they were just the best. And not just that, but they were truly fantastic at what they did. I mean, I've worked with many writers and editors in the past, and I don't know that I've ever worked with ones that were this good. And I don't mean that as a dog. I've worked with some great ones, but man, the folks at Linux Journal, man, they knew what they were doing. They really knew what they were doing. One of the guys at Linux Journal, Petros, he was doing this series where it was basically creating your own kernel from scratch and building your own operating system from scratch as an article series within Linux Journal. And it was easy to follow comparatively considering the topic, and fun. And I'm just like, wow, the people I'm working with are absolute geniuses, and they can manage to take something that's as highly complex as developing your own for scratch kernel, building it in a reliable way, and releasing it to people, and make it fun and enjoyable to read for someone who's never written their own kernel before. And I was like, wow, that's a cool thing. And it was awesome that I got to work with them. Just truly awesome. I'm bummed right now. So anyway, so it came to an end on Tuesday. So Tuesday the whatever that is. Today's Friday, and Tuesday morning I get out of bed. And the night before I'd been up kind of late because I was late on getting an article over to my editor. Because I had just tons of crazy stuff going on in my life lately. And there was this one article I wanted to spend a little extra time on, so I was a little late getting it to her. So I'm like, you know what? Monday night was there, and I'm like, I got to get this finished. I got to get this finished for my editor. I got to get it over to her. So I'm staying up late. I'm typing. I'm like, yeah, this is looking good. So I send it over. Get up the next morning, and normally I'd have like response in my inbox of like, oh, hey, this looks good, or blah, 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 or can you send me some pictures? Stuff that an editor would do. Instead, I get some messages from my editor and publisher that the magazine was shutting down. Like, not just shutting down, shut down. So Linux Journal was not owned by itself, right? Linux Journal had been purchased by a company called London Trust Media about a year and a half ago, something like that, about that, 2 years ago. Because they were, it was kind of, Linux Journal was having a hard time making it. The magazine business is a tough one nowadays. It's just the magazines don't do that well. Magazines and newspapers fold like the wind lately. And, Linux Journal needed a little help. So this company called London Trust Media, which owns private internet access, they came in and they kind of saved the day, right? They swooped in and they purchased Linux Journal and kind of gave it some runway to kind of get back on its feet and kind of help it to continue to be this amazing force for literary awesomeness within the Linux world. And man, and so we flash forward to Tuesday, and there had been that I'd seen no indication that things were going to get shut down anytime soon. But then we got this notice that, hey, shut down as of yesterday. So apparently it had been shut down like Monday or Monday night, something like that, Monday afternoon, and we just didn't know. We just didn't know it was closed. So yeah, it was a surprise. It's honestly still a little bit surprising that happened in that way and so quickly. I'm a little disappointed that the parent company didn't, work things through a little bit better on that. I don't know why they did that. That's odd. But the good news is that Linux Journal lasted as long as it did. and did a lot of good within the Linux and open source and free software and general computing world. And the fact that I got to be a deputy editor of it was just too cool for words. And for those wondering, I picked my own title. Yeah, I did. So we decided, when we decided to get me involved, they're like, they just want me to come on board and write and help with the article selections and writing and getting things out and whatnot. And they're like, well, what title do you want? And I'm like, I don't know. And so they came up with a bunch of different titles that had editor at the end. It was like assistant editor and deputy editor. And I'm like, wait a minute, deputy? That makes me think of cowboys. I want to work in the sheriff's office. I'm the deputy editor. Yeah. Anyway, it was fun. I'm so glad that I had that opportunity. It was truly fantastic. It's a feather in my cap, to be absolutely sure, and I'm a lucky guy to have had the chance to do it, to be able to look back on that time and point to it and say, rad. I now have this totally awesome thing on my resume that says deputy editor of Linux Journal magazine, the granddaddy of all Linux magazines. I know that a lot of you really enjoyed the articles that I got to write in there, and that feels really good too. Plus, honestly, I made some extra friends in the process. The Linux Journal people are just amazing people. They truly, truly are. If anyone out there needs Linuxy like editors and writers and whatnot, I can point you to literally the best ones on the planet. So feel free to reach out, and I'll point you in their direction. They're truly wonderful. I don't know what this means for me and my writing. Maybe I'll pick up and finally finish up some of the books that I've been trying to finish for years now. Maybe I'll go write for a different publication or magazine again. Maybe I'll just write for my own website. I don't know. I'll probably take a couple of weeks and not worry about writing too much and just kind of think about where I want to go in my writing endeavors. I'll come up with something, and it'll be rad. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to come up with something rad. I don't know. But anyway, to Linux Journal, you will be missed. And you did a lot of good. To all the people who contributed to Linux Journal over its 2,075-year run, thank you for making the whole Linux world a slightly more awesome place. You done good. I want to shout out to one of the show sponsors, Pogo Linux. Pogo Linux has also been around for over 20 years now. Really? Yeah. Really? Yeah, I think so. A long time. They've been around a long time, and they've been contributing to Linux conferences, supporting shows like this, doing giveaways all the time. The Pogo Linux people are just awesome. They've got Linux in their domain name, Linux in their business name. They ship machines that are rad and filled with and powered by Linux. Can't say enough good things. I love the companies and the people that I surround myself with. Just an aside, I make some ridiculous choices in my life. Sometimes I'll decide I'm going to use a whole lot of DOS for a month. I just do weird things. I'm going to use nothing but Palm OS mobile devices this month. I make very questionable choices. But one thing I have nailed is I have surrounded myself with some of the kindest, smartest, sweetest people, like the Linux Journal people, like the folks over at Pogo Linux, who are just genuinely amazing, who make the Linux world and the whole computing world better just by being in it. So if you need a big righteous workstation like the kind I have here, which is just off screen right now, which is kind of a bummer because it's rad looking, go to pogolinux.com and check it out. If you want to get this show a variety of different ways, going over to lunduke.com, you can see all the RSS feeds and the iTunes and the links and the stuffs and the whatnots. You can also get a hold of me various ways. One of the funnest ways is by telnetting into my BBS at bbs.lunduke.com. Go to lunduke.com for all the information on that. And if you want to get the video version of this show, and you're averse to the YouTube, go to library, lbry.com, download the client. I thought they had an iOS client, but maybe they only have an Android client. Someone was telling me they may not have an iOS client. I don't know. I don't use iPhones much. I actually have an iPhone here. This is not a joke. I have an iPhone right here in my hand, that I'm doing a review on because Lunduk does a review of the iPhone. It's just funny to me. So I'm going to be doing a review of an iPhone next week. But I guess I could try things out on that, but I really haven't. But it's for Android and Linux desktops and Mac and Windows and all the other things. Plus, there's a web interface. I am just the @Lunduk channel. Go check it out there. So there's no DRM. You just download the actual MP4 files. There's a crypto coin involved if you want to tip me there, which is great. Actually, it's fantastic because per view, I make more money over on Library than I do on YouTube with all the YouTube ads and everything else. Man, YouTube is just not a great deal for creators like me. Anyway, again, Linux Journal, it was nice to know you. And, I don't know what the future holds for Linux Journal archives, for all the people that worked on Linux Journal. I honestly don't know, but I hope good things. I hope good things. I hope I can help make it into good things. And that is all for today. I'll see you all tomorrow.